This is the final word, T20 World Cup Daily, Day 9 of the Super 12s tournament. Hello to the 5 or so people watching this show on a day when India all but got knocked out of the tournament. Afghanistan played Namibia today as well. Jeff Lemon and Adam Collins with you. Let's start with Adam describing the New Zealand-India match in the space of 30 seconds or less.
It was a spifflication. India only made it to 110 for 7 at the end of their allotted overs after being sent into Dubai Sports City, principally due to the spin of Ish Sodhi and Mitchell Santner. They were unhittable, but the job was started already inside the power play with early wickets. Rohit Sharma was shuffled down to number 4. It didn't work. Virat Kohli holed out for 9 from 17. It didn't work. If not for Jadeja making 26 at the end, they would have fallen short of 3 figures. 61 scoreless deliveries and 71 balls on the trot where they didn't hit a boundary. New Zealand do it easy with 33 balls to spare, 8 wickets in hand. Daryl Mitchell, the principal destroyer, making 49. What a victory.
What a result indeed. Now let's start with the bigger picture first, which is that India are not quite knocked out of the tournament yet. Here is how it works. India have to play Afghanistan, Namibia and Scotland. So do New Zealand, and Pakistan have to play Namibia and Scotland. In order for India to make the semis, they need both Namibia and Scotland to beat one of Pakistan or New Zealand. So both of those teams have to beat one of those higher ranked teams. And they also need Afghanistan to lose to New Zealand. So New Zealand have to win against Afghanistan and lose against the other two, or Pakistan have to lose against the other two, and India have to win their remaining 3 matches heavily in order to get a net run rate boost. There is a chance, as Jim Carrey said in Dumb and Dumber. You're telling me there's a chance. There is.
Yeah, it reminds me of when we were kids growing up, Jeff. They'd say something was mathematically possible in the AFL when it was footy finals time. Well, mathematically possible means very, very improbable, and that's the case for India from here, because the destiny is no longer in their hands. Tonight was all about control for India, making sure that they could advance to the second half of this group stage with a chance of making sure they could control their own destiny, and they weren't able to do so. They were indecisive early on. They made a big structural shift. I grant that it was necessitated by Surya Kumar Yadav not being available with a back spasm, but Ishan Kishan coming into the team, opening with him, Rohit shuffling down for the first time in years, it just meant that they were discombobulated, and when it didn't come off in the power play, they needed Kohli to come off. And look, he batted beautifully against Pakistan last week, but they were so deeply in the hole during the power play. New Zealand had the wind at their back, and everything was working. I mentioned Ish Sodhi taking 2 for 17, getting both Rohit and Kohli. We saw 2 Indian top order players both caught in identical fashion by Daryl Mitchell at deep backwards square leg. Ishan the first of those 2. So you kind of look at it, and they were so far behind the game, they needed someone in their lower middle order to completely come off. And then you look at the imbalance. The fact that Hardik Pandya bowled and they brought in Shardul Thakur as an extra bowler who was barely needed with the ball. So they could have, in theory, played an extra batsman, an extra specialist batsman if Hardik was fit to bowl. So it was scrappy. The planning didn't work. They looked behind the pace, and now the favourites going into the tournament have just about been bundled out in straight sets.
I didn't mind the reconfiguration because I didn't think it had a big impact on how they played overall. So Ishan Kishan, they brought him in. He's better at the top. He goes hard at the ball, and so they wanted to pop him in early and see if it would work. He was out pretty quickly. Rohit comes in at first drop, and so effectively it's the Rohit Sharma, KL Rahul opening partnership. They're together in the power play and they're doing things as they normally would. And that was the moment, about sort of 4 or 5 overs into the power play, when it looked like the match might be on India's terms. Adam Milne came on to bowl. Both batsmen liked the extra pace. Rohit clipped one of those lovely sixes that he just knocks away over deep square leg. They were starting to look pretty good at that point, and then it starts to unravel. KL Rahul gets out, caught in the deep. The power play comes to an end. Rohit holes out off Ish Sodhi. New Zealand spinners started putting overs together, conceding 2 runs here, 4 runs there. They couldn't score off Bolt and Southey. Even when Milne came back, they couldn't score off him either. I mean, almost nobody. I think KL Rahul and Jadeja were the only Indian players to score at a strike rate of over 100 in the innings, which makes sense when they finished up with far less than a run a ball in terms of the target they set of 110. So there was that moment where it looked like Rowett and Kale might be able to make things work, but it was quicksand after that. It was swampy. It was running with gumboots on. Like, nobody could get any sort of momentum going through the middle. The partnership between Rishabh Pant and Hardik Pandya, two of the most destructive strikers that India have, they scored 22 off 24 balls in their partnership. And every time an Indian player tried to go big and take on the bowling, they were caught in the deep. There was some element of misfortune there, in that literally every big shot when somebody tried to break the go slow and get things moving ended up carrying to a fielder in the deep, and nothing worked, nothing came off, and New Zealand loved it, they relished it, and they just kept the squeeze on throughout.
Yeah, and it could have and should have been worse, really. Milne, I said that Rowett came in at 4. Of course, he came in at 3, but 15 off that Milne over comes after he was dropped first ball down at fine leg. I mean, they could have been operating with Bolt on a hat-trick early on. And look, yeah, you're right that from there, it was the way the spinners combined so nicely, and all those dot balls. I mean, yeah, you can talk about the dew and batting second factor in this World Cup. I get all of that, but absorbing 61 dot balls, going 71 deliveries without a boundary, as I mentioned in the summary, you're just not going to win games of cricket with that set of numbers. It doesn't matter how good your six hitting is and how effective you can be at the death if it does come off. You're playing so far behind when you're affording the bowling team, the fielding team, so many opportunities to tie you down throughout the middle overs there, which is what Sodhi was able to do so nicely on his 29th birthday. We've seen him bowl really well for New Zealand in both 50 over and 20 over cricket over an extended stretch of time, but it's at this tournament. We've already seen in both games that he's played, he looks really good. We know how effective wrist spin bowling is in T20 cricket around the world. And look, there was a point made on social media that India's players don't necessarily get exposed to the same range of players in T20 cricket because they play the IPL and that's all they play. This is a bigger picture structural question, but if you're up against players, take Daryl Mitchell, who doesn't play in the IPL, but he seemingly plays everywhere else. He's getting a different range of experiences. Now, I'm not saying that's why tonight's result went the way it did, but it's an interesting debating point, isn't it, that if you're just in that slipstream of playing for India and playing in the Indian Premier League each year, despite how brilliant it is, are you getting the same range of experiences as you might be if you're a bit of a T20 journeyman like Daryl Mitchell, or like Devon Conway for that matter, who's come to this position in the international game, having moved countries and got there the hard way through domestic cricket and all the rest of it. So yeah, there'll be a lot of soul searching tonight for Indian fans, knowing that they came in with such high expectations. Virat Kohli and Ravi Shastri especially talking about why this tournament meant so much to the leadership axis. Kohli saying that he was going to give up the captaincy, after winning this comp. Remember, it was meant to be held in India. It's still effectively them hosting this, albeit in the UAE. So yeah, you saw the face of Kohli, didn't you, Jeff, when they were batting today, seeing the blood draining out of his face, realising towards the end of that first innings that the chances of them now winning this comp and holding up the trophy are next to zero.
And I will say, I've heard so many people bang on about this thing that the tournament's unfair because the team chasing has been winning all of the games. A hot tip for you, the team chasing is going to win if the team batting first bats like dog's balls and puts up a target of 110 or 120. Yeah, surprise, surprise, the chasing team is going to chase it because it's easy to chase. I mean, we saw England demolish Australia in the same sort of way. I mean, India looked like they were replicating the Australian innings out there tonight in the way that, sure, wickets were going down, but there's no point nudging it around and taking 4 or 5 singles in the 14th and 15th over when, okay, you've got 4 or 5 or 6 wickets down, but making 90 or 100 or 110 isn't going to win you a game. Like, you might as well take the risks and get out trying, and they just weren't willing to do that sort of frequently enough or from the top enough. Jadeja did a bit of it at the end, found the fence a few times, and as has often been the case, Jadeja is left with too much work to do and manages to produce the goods on a lot of occasions, but was left all on his own to do all the lifting. But it had nothing to do with batting first or not. Like you said, 61 scoreless deliveries, if you count the wickets in that, 61 balls from which they didn't score. Now, you can win a game doing that if you hit 20 sixes off your other deliveries, but they hit 2. So they're not structured as that massive power hitting side. Like probably, KL Rahul and Rohit Sharma are the main 6 hitters, I suppose, up the top, and they can do that in the power play on occasion. But India aren't set up as a massively clearing the ropes side. Rishabh Pant's got this weird thing in T20 internationals where he scores relatively slowly. We've seen how fast he can score in Test cricket, but struggles to do the same in the shortest format. Kohli's been out of nick in terms of just the speed of which he can move through an innings, and got really bogged down today. And what was left for anybody else? There was nothing for them to do anything with, and it was so easy for New Zealand to come out. The way they approached it, Martin Guptill swung a few away and was out relatively early, but there was obviously this calculated thing that Williamson was just going to rotate strike. He just opened the face of the bat, played behind point in that manner that he does again and again. And Daryl Mitchell, who's a bit of a pinch hitting opener, really, they've just popped him up there to see if it'll work. He just threw the stick at everything that came his way, and he got a few out of the middle, hit a few sixes, and got that 49 off 30 odd balls. And by that time, the game was basically broken. There was no opportunity for India to get in the game, despite how well Jasprit Bumrah bowled. I thought he was tremendous again, trying to lift up a team that was absolutely sagging, but there was no room for players of that quality to be able to influence the result.
Yeah, a word here for Adam Milne, who I thought came back really well after dropping that catch, going around for 15 in his first over. His last 3 go for 15 combined, including bowling punt when it was the combination of dot ball pressure, wasn't it? And that was contributed to by someone like Mitchell Santner. He won't get the plaudits tonight because he didn't take the wickets, but none for 15 from 4. His first 3 overs in a row with 9 off it at the perfect time, just when the fielders were able to go out, and he was able to control the game as he does so well with his left arm orthodox spin. And then the 6th over of New Zealand's batting power play, when Mitchell made the decision that he was going to take the calculated risk against Jadeja, who, again, he can perform the same role as Santner. And if Jadeja gets himself in the game there and gets an early wicket, first over of his spell, well, maybe they have to play more conservatively. But Mitchell breaks it open. I think it was 15 from the over, something like that, which meant they left the power play on a high. And from there, my observation on Twitter was basically New Zealand need to try and win this in 13, 14 overs in order to give themselves a chance of making up some of that net run rate that Afghanistan have got at the moment. Now, they didn't quite do that. They won, I think it was in 14.3 overs, but that's quite the effort considering when they rocked up today at Dubai, it would have been all about just getting the win, and they would have worried about net run rate against Scotland and Namibia, their next 2 games. Well, they've already started the process of that, of trying to haul in Afghanistan. And I tell you what, that game between New Zealand and Afghanistan is the penultimate game of the entire group stage in Group 2. So in Pool 2, rather. So we've got to wait over a week until they play each other. Between times, India play Afghanistan. Now, we'll come to Afghanistan in a moment, Jeff, but the way that India are playing right now, and Afghanistan having had 2 massive wins and one close run thing against Pakistan, they came an awful lot closer to beating Pakistan than India did. That is a game now that perhaps India would have thought was one of their more comfortable group games when they set up for this competition. Now that is very much staring them in the face as a game that is a danger game, and Afghanistan, by contrast, do have their destiny in their own hands, because if they beat India and they beat New Zealand, they're through, and they don't play New Zealand for a week. So all the emphasis will be on that game. I think it's on Wednesday when India play Afghanistan, and that could ultimately be the end of India entirely. It'll be not even about other results. They have to win every game from here to even have a sniff.
And Afghanistan are currently sitting second in the group. They're on 4 points. I'm going to tell you about their match against Namibia today in 30 seconds or less. It was pretty straightforward. It was the expendables. It was get the old firm back together. Mohammad Shahzad, Mohammad Nabi and Asghar Afghan playing in his last match for Afghanistan. curiously just deciding to retire mid-tournament. No politics involved there, I'm sure. They put on 160 and Namibia were nowhere near it. They couldn't cope with the quality of the bowling. Hamid Hassan came back and bowled rockets and bowled Yorkers and hit people on the toe and hit the stumps, and Namibia were 98 for 9 in the end, limping along. So 4 points on the board for Afghanistan. This was a curious one. So Asghar Afghan whacked 31. He hit a couple of big shots, had a lovely big one down the ground, and then he went off. He had a guard of honour as he went off, and he was in tears on the boundary line in his last match for Afghanistan. You've got to wonder what's going on behind the scenes there. Like, this is the guy who was sacked as captain just before the 2019 World Cup, which ended up being a disastrous move for Afghanistan. Got the job back somehow, got criticised by the board when Afghanistan lost a test match to Zimbabwe. Now the Taliban take over. Now the fellow who used to run the Afghanistan cricket board is back in charge, and now Afghans just mysteriously decided to retire mid-tournament. I mean, work it out.
Yeah, look, I'm willing to sort of shoulder arms to that for the time being, only because when he spoke today, he kind of hinted that it was after the Pakistan loss that he just felt like it was the right time. And I suppose I'm willing to take that on face value for now. You're right to ask those questions though, Jeff, and I respect that you do. But I mean, the way that he was responding today, he did make 31 off 23 balls, and they did fire today. Shazad making 45, Nabi 32 not out from 17 balls at the death. He's having a great tournament. Zaza up the top, making 33 from 27, and then Asghar Afghan, as you mentioned, making the 31. They did get up to 160, and just to run through some numbers with Asghar Afghan that are just mind-boggling when you think about it. Today, Namibia were his 40th international opponent across 2 decades. He led them in 41 victories in T20 internationals. Nobody has led more consecutive wins in T20 international cricket, even more than MS Dhoni at the peak of his powers. So this guy has kind of done it all. He took them from Division 5 to being a full member of the ICC. He's been on that whole ride along with Nabi, and I'm glad that he's been able to bow out on the global stage. He of course led Afghanistan to the 2016 World Cup. He led them in their first test match. So today was a bit of a valedictory, or a bit of a coronation of sorts in a way, because they were celebrating him, wearing the big dark sunglasses and clearly crying underneath those as he left the field at the end, and when his batting innings came to a close as well. So a special day for Afghanistan cricket, but also an important one. They were able to add to their net run rate, as we mentioned before. It's got a 3 in front of it now. We saw some brilliant fast bowling. We've seen them able to rack up a big score for the second time in the comp. They nearly hauled down a decent chase against Pakistan. It's all starting to click for them. And remember, they had the best record over the last couple of years out of any full member nation in T20 cricket. So this isn't sort of a surprise they're doing well here on the big stage.
Well, I'm just waiting for Asghar Afghan to make a comeback when they make the final, and maybe take the captaincy as well. And Nabi's being captain just because somebody has to do it, because Rashid Khan wasn't keen to do it after he was named captain without being consulted about it. So, it's all going on for Afghanistan. But Naveen Ul-Haq bowled really well, took 3 wickets.
Yeah, he's good, isn't he? I mean, the mini Bumrah, as they were calling him on the coverage the other day, the way that, not so much the run-up, but that last step and the way that he fades away but gets all that work through his front shoulder. He gets plenty of movement, decent revs as well. Them having 2 genuinely quick bowlers, we think a lot about their power hitting, but they've got, of course, Mujib and Rashid Khan. Rashid took a wicket with his first ball today, but we already know what they can do, the tweakers. Being able to complement that with 2 genuine quicks, I mean, as I said before, it does seem to be... I mean, we criticised India about not necessarily having a sustainable plan at the moment. Afghanistan seem like they've got one.
And Mujib missed out today with an injury niggle, but Hamid Hassan came in, hasn't played T20 cricket for literally years for Afghanistan. 3 for 9, including this incredible Yorker that tailed in and hit the base of leg stump. Suddenly looking $1 million. A couple of wickets for Gulbuddin Naib as well, the bodybuilder, who's getting the guns out every time he takes one, as per usual. It all seems to be clicking at the moment, and I think we're in for an interesting last week or so of the tournament for Afghanistan. The Hall of Fame segment that is brought to you by Woodstock cricket.co.uk. Go there, put in TFW20 and you get 20% off a cricket bat. Couldn't be easier. Any Hall of Fame nominations from you, Adam?
Yeah, I've got a few. Trent Boult taking that catch early on and pointing at the rope. It was clearly related to the catch that wasn't with the 2019 World Cup final with Ben Stokes, and also a very similar catch that he took off Carlos Brathwaite, wasn't it, to win that game earlier in the World Cup when they nearly let it slip through their fingers. But so he's got form on the rope there and all the rest of it, and they unfortunately for him showed it on the main coverage today, that catch that wasn't against Ben Stokes. You already mentioned Hamid Hassan coming back at age 34. He's lost nothing. That Yorker to Erasmus was to die for. That guard of honour was lovely. I thought the way Naveen spoke about the former captain was just quality as well. You know, a younger player in the team or a more junior player in the team, like having that respect for the older player, handing over his Player of the Match award to Asghar Afghan. That was a really lovely touch. And one last one from me was when Kane Williamson played a late cut to take them within about 5 runs away from winning. And as Mark Nicholas, as he swooned over it, said on commentary, you see that over first slip, you see it over second slip, you don't see it over leg slip. He leant so far back doing the limbo that he placed it over where leg slip might otherwise be. It was genius batting from Williamson, who we haven't even mentioned, Jeff, but after losing a wicket inside the power play, he got them all the way to the finish line.
Yes, yeah. Mark Nicholas was having another good day.
He was.
The ball that Hardik Pandya put over the leg side, it went high in the air, but the Nicholas commentary was high. He's just really into the onomatopoeic repetition at the moment. That's the Nicholas tangent for this particular World Cup. We'll be back tomorrow.
But before we go, we won't. Tomorrow it'll be Isabel Westbury and Daniel Norcross, who were great last night, by the way, if you didn't watch them do their thing. They're going to be here for the England-Sri Lanka game. We know, by the way, that it may not be a tournament that's watched by quite so many people if India do get bundled out. We get that. But let's look at the bigger picture. If you're a fan of Indian cricket and you're disappointed they're not going so well, it doesn't mean you can't still get behind this competition. It's the World Cup. It's only got a week and a half to go. It's a relatively short tournament. Stay in touch. If India don't go through, so be it. Let's support the game. Let's all be there for cricket's sake, and we're going to keep making the show every night.
Yeah, we'll be here, so you might as well come and hang out with us. Pick another team, get involved.
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure Australia aren't likely to go through either.
No,
so
wouldn't have thought
so. We shall see over the days to come. Final Word Daily. Jeff Lemon, Adam Collins. See you next time.
Bye.